Hey guys, hope you're having a good night. What I'm going to do is start with not doing the amplified version today. Going to do for Isaiah 5, I'm going to do the study notes, a lot of study notes from the ESV study Bible. And then once we've gone through that, then I'll read at the end the messenger version to get it, I think it'll work best for this because this is a poem. So Isaiah 5, ESV version. The vineyard of the Lord destroyed. Let me sing for my beloved, my love song concerning his vineyard, the beloved being the Father, the vineyard being Jerusalem and Judea. Or in other words, we'll just leave it at that. My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He dug it and cleared it of stones and planted it with choice vines. He built a watchtower in the midst of it and hoed out a wine vat in it. And he looked for it to yield grapes, but it yielded wild grapes being like sour grapes, bitter grapes, not the beautiful, delicious, tasty ones that people that make wine are very careful to choose and care for so that it isn't bitter. And now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. In other words, what else could I have done for you? Did I not do all that I could do for you? Did I not care for you? Did I not provide everything that you could have needed? I gave you protection. I covered you. And yet, bitter grapes. What more was there to do for my vineyard that I have not done in it? When I looked for it to yield grapes, why did it yield wild grapes? And now I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. And I will remove its hedge, and it shall be devoured. In other words, the protection is being taken away, so that anyone that's planted anything, if you don't protect your plants, the bunnies are going to come eat it, I will break down its wall, and it shall be trampled down. I will make it a waste. It shall not be pruned or hoed, and briars and thorns shall grow up. If you don't, again, with the whole metaphor here, if you plant something and don't make sure the weeds don't overgrow it, then it's going to get destroyed. Like, why did you bother? I will also command the clouds that no rain upon it. Obviously, if you don't water something, it dies. And the note for that is that in verses 5 through 6, these verses 5 and 6 there, these verses use imagery to describe foreign invasion and national destruction. So it would be like taking away the military and not providing land for farmers to grow and not schooling the children. All those provisions, again, being taken away, which is... this is when you have to start really discerning which father you're being spoken about here. Like, when did it go from that providing father to the one that purposely takes these things away? Where's that line in yourself where you're willing to take responsibility as opposed to being really... If you weren't grateful to the Father for the things that you have, if you weren't able to look inside yourself and say, I did the right thing, I put in the work, I was consistent in my goodness, in my caring for the family that the Father gave me, or the land that the Father provided, that Mother Gaia made available for me to nourish. Did I nourish it? Did I nourish my soul so that I could have the strength to nourish these things that are such a blessing, that require my heart to be in it? Is your heart pure? Or are you going to be blindly not really coming from the heart? And then when things go to hell, you're going to say, I lost track of the Father. I don't even know what happened. I'm going to blame him. Did you till the ground? Did you take care of Mama Gaia? Or did you just decide that, oh, nothing grew? Well, did you give the land time to heal between crops? Or did you just keep taking and thinking that everything would be okay? Those two gods in this Bible can also be described as those two inside yourself. The one that was careful and loving and kind and hardworking and diligent, and the one that looked ahead. And looked ahead not because, that verse about worry only for today. Well, yeah, but that's also a spiritual thing when we're talking about the land here. And even it's such a fine line. This is when we start getting confused, isn't it? This is when we start trying to throw those simple verses out like, oh, we're not supposed to worry about tomorrow, we'll just deal with today. Well, did you take on the responsibility to feed yourself and others around you? Did you have a job to feed yourself, or did you plant something so you could feed yourself? And more than that, were you able to actually care for the land and be diligent about the work so that the crop would come in? And of course, that also means in your spiritual walk. Are you a baby? Are you eating meat? Like, I was asleep the last 8 months. I'm restarting this walk with the Father, this nourishing of my spirit with these words. I used to know these verses back, I really was all about these. I could tell you verse and chapter and verse, starting to after first becoming a person of faith and studying these scriptures. And there's so many more scriptures that I've been taken out of here that I have to still get to. I am a baby at this, but I am going to make it a priority so that I don't fall asleep again. This is what this book is really about. So we could start nitpicking it and start looking at, well, which father's being represented here? And there's a time and place for that. Which God? Is it Father, or is it Yahweh? Is it that Father that of wrath? That God of wrath? Or is it our loving Creator that lacks nothing, so why would he have you lack anything? We could look at it like that. For the purposes of this, because of where I am having to restart my walk, I'm looking at it as a place of sovereignty. Like, what I'm looking at this in that dynamic, looking at myself and the characteristics of the Father up against them. And that's what I think this poem is about. And the Father uses many things, like why if some of you feel like, oh, there's a lot of guilt here, don't be offended by it. Look at it from above it. Look at it from a bird's eye view, and just look at the cause and effect of things. Perhaps that will help you, as it's helping me at seeing it that way on this particular reading. Because I guarantee you, give me another 3 weeks or a month or a year or 3 years, and I'm going to reread this completely different, as it should. It's as if this book is alive. Like I said, it grows with you. It waits for you. Back to this. So verse 7, for the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah are his pleasant planting. And he looked for justice, but behold bloodshed, for righteousness, but behold an outcry. Well, what are they saying here? According to the notes here, God's high expectations of his people were fair. He made all the provisions available. They just didn't even look for them, or even, and if they did know where they were, they didn't. They just kind of walked past them and said, yeah, whatever. In different ways, of course. He looked for justice, but behold bloodshed, for righteousness, but behold an outcry. Well, as the ESV footnotes on bloodshed and outcry explain, Isaiah uses wordplay here. He aims to show that sin does not simply fail to reach a standard, it distorts good and evil. Woe to the wicked, verse 8. Now, for verse 8 through 30, it says, this section translates the metaphorical wild grapes and into, here we go, into literal realities. The 6 woes lament the bitter fruits of Israel's character, and 4 therefores anticipate the harvest of inescapable consequences. Inescapable consequences, cause and effect. It's a universal law, guys. Woe to those who join the house. Woe to those who join house to house, who add field to field, until there is no more room. And you are made to dwell alone in the midst of the land. The Lord of hosts has sworn. And let me give further notes on that real quick here. From 8 to 10, we just read 8. We're going to go through verse 10. Leviticus 25 taught Israel to return purchased lands in the year of Jubilee. Jubilee is, I believe, every 75 years, I believe. If I'm wrong, please correct me. Always, always, always add your own commentary to the comments, please, and always correct because I'm, like I said, I'm returning to this, and as I was when I was really diligent with it, still a baby, which is exciting for someone that thirsts for this. I'm excited that I'm continuing to thirst for this, because that thirst never, it's just like, it's refreshing. It refreshes. The land is mine, God said, and he parceled it out to families as their permanent inheritance from him. In 1 Kings, and in restoring the property to the original owner ensures a fresh start for whoever had fallen on hard times. So they partial it out, but restoring the property is important so that whenever someone moves on and they come back in, they have it ready to go. It's not, you don't get there and it's just trashed, the soil sucked up, they make sure to restore the land. And therefore those who join house to house, who add field to field until there is no room, do business without regard for God's instruction to his land. And it gives here a note to see Amos 3:15, and on that note, and I was going to read it, but the general gist is the conclusion of the message emphasizes in a general way the 2 factors that would account for the coming destruction. Why didn't things work out? Why is there so much trepidation? Why is there so much struggle and hardship? Well, first, false ritualistic religion. And 2, the accumulation of wealth at the expense of the poor. A lot of rich people are starting to struggle and starting to falter and starting to be made accountable because of their false ritualistic religions and the accumulation of wealth at the expense of the poor. Cause and effect. So, back here. The Lord of hosts has sworn in my hearing. Okay, until there is no more room and you are made to dwell alone in the midst of the land. The Lord of hosts has sworn in my hearing. Surely many houses shall be desolate, large and beautiful houses without inhabitants. For 10 acres of vineyard shall yield but 1 bath. In other words, what normally should have been enough for all, it hardly grows anything. For 10 acres of vineyard shall yield by 1 bath, and a homer of seed shall yield by an apap. And those are just measurements that they had back then. And woe to those who rise early in the morning, that they may run after strong drink. Who tarry late into the evening, as wine inflames them. In other words, those people that just are intoxicated or not sober all day long. They have lyre and harp, tambourine and flute and wine at their feast. They party it up. They got the good music, they got the good buffet, but they again forgot all about the Father and his instructions. But they do not regard the deeds of the Lord or see the work of his hands. They think it's all, oh, well, I'm rich. Yeah, I have a bunch of slaves. I got a bunch of, employees in this company. But they don't even know their employees' names. They have too many employees to know. They don't have overseers to take care of them. They insure them as little as possible. They cut every corner, and they just don't care as long as they're making money. Therefore my people go into exile for lack of knowledge. Their honored men go hungry, and their multitude is parched with thirst. Therefore Sheol, or what the Greek would be considered Hades, that place of the dead, not hell, but where the dead kind of hold still, like it's usually called Hades, but here's Sheol, Sheol, S-H-E-O-L, has enlarged its appetite and opened its mouth beyond measure, and the nobility of Jerusalem and her multitude will go down, her revelers and he who exalts in her. So again, all the partiers, all the people that didn't care about their employees, all the people that didn't care about the land, it's the rich folk. It's a lot of the rich folk. It's the rich folk. Man is humbled, and this could be also, richness varies. So it's not just like the CEOs. It's also, let's say you own a private business, and yet you could be doing the same sort of screwed up thing with your few employees. So it's not just the rich folk. I guess it's the people in charge that should have known better. The ones that took it and made it their responsibility to care for something. And I guess if you could be poor, and if you chose to care for something and didn't, and I think we've all done that. I don't know anybody that hasn't failed at something. But did you recover it, or did you continue to do that over and over again everywhere you went? Every business you tried. Did you grow, or did you just stay stagnant? Man is humbled, and each one is brought low, and the eyes of the haughty are brought low, but the Lord of hosts is exalted in justice. And the holy God shows himself holy in righteousness. And I just wanted to make a note on that for those that do look for those two gods. This line really, but the Lord of hosts is exalted in justice, and the holy God shows himself only in righteousness. So that's verse 16 of chapter 5. Interesting, huh? Clearly talking about two different folks there. Moving on. Then this verse 17. Then shall the lamb graze as in their pasture, and nomads shall eat among the ruins of the rich. What does that mean? Well, that means this suggests the devastation of Jerusalem as sheep graze and scavenge eat where the mighty ones strolled. Very apocalyptic vision there. Woe to those who draw iniquity with the cords of falsehood, who draw sin as with their cart ropes, who say, let him be quick, let him speed his work, that we may see it. Let the counsel of the Holy One of Israel draw near, and let it come, that we may know it. Woe to those who call evil good, and good evil. So that's the general notes that I wanted to get to here. And I wanted to, before I switch it, because I know it's very difficult to read this, and that's why I think the Father's having me read the Messenger. Now that you get the gist of what the notes are, we'll switch to the Messenger. But I wanted to do one more note here on for a later here for 26. He will raise a signal for nations far away, and whistle for them from the ends of the earth. And behold, quickly, speedily they come. So that Lord of hosts one that will bring purposefully war to clear out the space. I think there's a difference between the type of father that would just have to go, I can't stop their free will, cause and effect, and will allow it. Will take out his good men and good women and just lead his remnant to a safe place and be like, I'm just going to have to allow it. I'm going to call them out of those places. And a lot of us have gotten that call. I know I did. Why did several of us in my small group have ended up in literally the desert for a year? And it's like, we've talked about it a lot. How did we get out of the matrix and end up out here in the middle of the desert? Father told us to prepare us. So those people that are called out of major cities where the destruction would be the worst, out of just having all that there and having so much energy and when you have that many people that are not like-minded and don't have the Father in their heart, cleansing them with that spirit fire of having to look at themselves and having to recognize their faults and having to want the desire to be a better person, to see themselves. And that's not an easy path at all to have to sift through. It takes time. So those that are called out are the ones that are willing to hear that call and listen and come out and start straightening themselves out. But anyway, that said, let's finish this with reading the Messenger version, now that you get the gist of what this long poem is about. And we'll close. Let's see. Looking for a crop of justice. I'll sing a ballad to the one I love. A love ballad about his vineyard. The one I love had a vineyard, a fine, well-placed vineyard. Our hearts are good. Our hearts are designed well. Our hearts can take that seed of the Father, and as long as we keep allowing it and feeding that good wolf, not that negative wolf. Do we starve the negative wolf out? I don't think so. Have you ever seen a starved animal? It goes insane. You know, the starved animal is a dangerous animal. You give provisions to that animal so that it doesn't go crazy. There's a balance between that dark and that light. It's called that middle way. I sing a ballad to the one I love, a love ballad about his vineyard. The one I love had a vineyard, a fine, well-placed vineyard. He hoed the soil and pulled the weeds and planted the very best vines. He built a lookout, built a wine press, a vineyard to be proud of. He looked for vintage yields of grapes, but for all his pains, he got junk grapes. How did that happen? How did our lives fall apart? Those provisions were there, but we didn't either know about them because no one taught us, or we didn't heed the call to seek it out for ourselves. We are not children. And those children that are, those little children that are running around, we need to know a better way to teach them. We need to know these things that the Father is teaching us through these scriptures and through other scriptures and through our experiences with people that we see that are at peace because they come from the heart. Now listen to what I'm telling you. You who live in Jerusalem and Judea, what do you think is going on between me and my vineyard? Can you think of anything I could have done to my vineyard that I didn't do? When I expected good grapes, why did I get bitter grapes? Expectations. Well, now let me tell you what I'll do to my vineyard. I'll tear down its fence and let it go to ruin. I'll knock down the gate and let it be trampled. I'll turn it into a patch of weeds, unattended, uncared for. Thistles and thorns will take over. I'll give orders to the clouds. Don't rain on the vineyard ever. Do we ever give those instructions? Would a loving God ever give those instructions? Well, we have the spark of the Father in us. We know better. We should know better. How do we know better? We start looking inward and saying, have we done this to ourselves? We're sovereign beings. Is my life a mess because I've allowed it to be? Have I given these orders to myself? Is my life in destruction because of it? Can I make better choices? Do you get it? I mean, the vineyard of God of angel armies is the country of Israel. We are his children. We have the capability to create beautiful things and lead beautiful lives like he made us capable of doing and creating. He gave us that spark of creation, that spark of love. Do we love ourselves enough? Do we know ourselves enough to be able to do so? All the men and women of Judah are the garden he was so proud of. He looked for a crop of justice and saw them murdering each other. He looked for a harvest of righteousness and heard only the moans of victims. I was stuck in victim mode for a long time, so I can't say I didn't do this. I did this to my life. We all have. A lot of us have. You who call evil good and good evil, doom to you who buy up all the houses and grab all the land for yourselves, evicting the old owners, posting no trespassing signs, taking over the country, leaving everyone homeless and landless. I overheard God of angel armies say, those mighty houses will end up empty. Those extravagant estates will be deserted. Very apocalyptic. The 10-acre vineyard will produce a pint of wine, a 50-pound sack of seed, a quart of grain. Doomed to those who get up early and start drinking booze before breakfast. Who stay up all hours of the night drinking themselves into a stupor. As a former addict, been there, done that, did that. I did that. Mine wasn't alcohol, it was another substance. Any substance you abuse, anything you abuse, overeating, whatever, anything you abuse will abuse you back, guys. They make sure their banquets are well furnished with harps and flutes and plenty of wine, but they'll have nothing to do with the work of God. Well, that's no different than you spend all your money on weed instead of make sure you had food and Gatorade if you were out in the heat. You know, just be smart, guys. Pay no mind to what he is doing, but he'll have nothing to do with the work of God. Pay no mind to what he is doing. Believe me, Father wants you to take good care of yourself. He wants you to make good choices. Because that's how his creation can work flawlessly. It's like a big old master clock. All the pieces will work if you oil them and keep them. If you don't throw wrenches in there. Therefore, my people will end up in exile because they don't know the score. The big man will starve to death, and the common people die of thirst. Sheol, that place of where the dead reside, develop a huge appetite, swallowing people non-stop. Can't tell you how many young people, well, I'm sure you have a list of yourself, a lot of you, if you've had that sort of lifestyle where people just end up dying way too young, or carelessly, stupid accidents. Big people and little people alike, down the gullet, to say nothing of all the drunks. The down and out on a par with the high and mighty, windbag boasters crumbled. Flaccid as a punctured bladder, but by working justice, God of angel armies will be a mountain. By working righteousness, holy God will show what holy is. And lambs will graze. Now, and again, those two differentiation of those gods. By working justice, God of angel armies will be a mountain. By working righteousness, holy God will show what holy is. Well, holy is to repent, to be sanctified, to forgive and be forgiven, and make better choices. and lambs will gaze as if they own the place. Kids and calves right at home in the ruins. Doom to you who use lies to sell evil. Who haul sin to market by the truckload. How did they kill all those cows? How did those chickens all live in those big farms, for example? How much of that medications that they say is legal, that they stuff down people's throats easy as pie, end up making them addicts and ruin their lives? That's legal, isn't it? Who say, God, what's God waiting for? Let him get a move on so we can see it. Whatever the Holy of Israel has cooked up, we'd like it to check it out. Well, those people that are all like, bring it, bring the end, bring the end. You take care of yourself and be holy. Don't be asking for this to come on to people. You should be being a good example for those people, so those people might see the light. And so when the end, when destruction ends, when the end of the beginning begins, when the destruction comes, and it has always been here in one way or another, but when it really has hit that momentum where it's just like, okay, it's not sustainable, it has to be restarted, something has to give, like those earthquakes all over the place, you know. Oh, they've been saying that for years. Yeah, well, there's only so much before it's just not sustainable and the pressure breaks. Doom to you who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness in place of light and light in place of darkness, who substitute bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Well, it's like those people that say, oh, well, you're going to hell. Really? You call that being good? Telling someone that they're going to go to hell? I don't think so. Oh, well, I'm trying to just show them the truth of their ways. Well, show them in a nice, loving way by caring for them and asking what happened to you as opposed to what's wrong with you. Make provisions for them. Whether they choose to take them or not, that's up to them, but you did your part by at least providing provisions for them to have a support basis to get out of that darkness and actually be able to see the light. Were you a light to them? Don't kick it there constantly. I mean, if they're not going to see the light, they're not going to see the light. They're going to just drag your energy and suck up your light, and you might end up falling asleep in the drama of it. But I hope you see what I'm trying to say here. I'm trying to continuously bring this back to ourselves, because I know I need to hear this. Man, do I need to hear it. Doom to you who think you're so smart. Case in point, right? I know I'm not, and I don't want to sound like I am. I just here hoping that there's at least one other person out here that's looking at this going, man, I didn't look at it that way. Could I look at it as for myself in this reading that we're having here right now today? Doom to you who think you're so smart, who hold such a high opinion of yourselves. Well, that part definitely not. All you're good at is drinking. Champion boozers who collect trophies from drinking bouts and then line your pockets with bribes from the guilty while you violate the rights of the innocent. God help us. There's so many people that do that. Look at that Epstein guy. And all I can think of is like, wow. Was there no one in his entire life that said, whoa, buddy, did he cause and effect? How does it get this out of hand? How do people feel so oppressed? They look at these situations and they say, yeah, let's really emphasize things like what they just mentioned, these drinking trophies for drinking bouts. Is that judgmental of me? Or could a group of people that are really into drinking or really into shooting ranges or what? I mean, I don't know. It's like, where do you draw the line? Where would that energy have better been used? the military using all that money to have such a stellar freaking army? Where did that energy decide? The momentum grows so vast that we don't have healthcare for everybody that's sustainable, and yet we have this army that's also now become not sustainable. Like, how did it get this bad? It has to be brought back into the self. Did you spend your energies or your money or your time wisely so that things that got this out of hand, could your energy have been used to not have it go this bad, have it be the opposite of that? I mean, what is it is it really going to take the entire structure of our world being destroyed again for us to start caring for the planet, to start caring for ourselves enough to have enough energy to care for others sustainably, consistently? But they won't get by with it. As fire eats stubble and dry grass goes up in smoke, their souls will atrophy. Their achievements crumble into dust because they said no to the revelation of God of angel armies. Would have nothing to do with the Holy of Israel. That's why God flamed out in anger against his people, reached out and knocked them down. Is that why we destroy ourselves? Is that the epitome of self-sabotage? We don't recognize ourselves as God's children. The mountains trembled as their dead bodies piled up in the streets. I think of riots. For my generation, I'm 39, so I'm thinking, ooh, the LA riots. I'm thinking, obviously, 9/11. I'm thinking that poor kid that got dragged behind a truck and then strapped to a fence and left to die because he was gay. How did we get to these sort of events? All of ISIS. And I'm not talking the Egyptian goddess. I'm talking about all those little kids that died in that school because it was a Christian school and they burnt their teacher in front of them. And it's like, I remember trying to talk to people about that here in the States when it happened, and it's like they didn't even want to talk about it. They literally physically moved away and just was like, no, I'm talking about something else. But even after that, he was still angry. His fist still raised, ready to hit them again. He raised a flag signaling a distant nation, whistled for people at the ends of the earth, and here they come, on the run. And for those of you that don't know what draconians are, or may not believe in them, that verse reminds me of draconians, and we're closing here soon. Thank you for your patience. Draconians are, and they're like vampires that eat negative energy. Whether you believe it or not, it's fine. But I see this sort of thing as the more we give them to feed on that's negative, which is their food, the more they're going to be right above us, cheering us on. Oh yeah, poking and poking and poking. Yes. Feed us more, please. Feed me, Seymour. You know, it's like that constant, big, huge beast that just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and we just keep feeding it and feeding it. Really watch your emotions and have that imagery of like you're literally being dined upon when you give to those energies. You're being fed upon. You're feeding that negative wolf, and you're the meal. And here they come on the run. None drag their feet. None of those people will drag their feet. Those draconians. No stumbles. No one sleeps or daddles. Shirts are on, pants buckled, every boot in spit polish and tied. Now here the actual what they're actually saying here is that, for example, in this history or potentially in ours, foreign armies will come in ready to go. Oh, they're ready for being plundered? You want to go a different way? Okay, those pirates that saw a bunch of idiot drunks and even pirates now. Oh, they're not these rich drunk folks. It's like, let's go get their boat. They're stumbling drunk or whatever. Or you can just look at it as anyone that sees something else get squandered. They can go. They'll just go get it because the people aren't taking care of it, and they'll find themselves justified in doing it. Have you done that to yourself? Have you seen yourself derailing and just kept going anyway? Just kept going. I mean, your life is falling the F apart and you just kept letting it happen. Their arrows are sharp, their bows strung, the hooves of their horses shod, chariot wheels greased, roaring like a pride of lions, the full-throated roars of young lions. They growl and seize their prey, dragging it off. No rescue for that one. They'll roar and roar and roar on that day, like the roar of ocean billows. Look as long as hard as you like at that land. You'll see nothing but darkness and trouble. Every light in the sky will be blacked out by the clouds. I know this was a hard one. I hope that some of you made it this far and that you can glean something up of it that helps you look at yourself and see, how can I lend my energy sustainably to something better? How can I be a better person? That's simple. How can I be the best version of myself for the sake of the kingdom, for the sake of having a good life, for the sake of being able to be of service to others, for the sake of being happy, sustainably so. I love you guys. Talk to you tomorrow.